We have already seen before how life on Earth is effectively dependent on one single reaction. This is the reaction between carbon dioxide and water to form glucose, a carbohydrate, and oxygen. This reaction illustrates how green plants on our planet trap energy from the sun and feed this energy into food chains, distributing it to all creatures who will release the cellular energy trapped in chemical bonds through the reverse process of respiration. The key part of this diagram is to recognize the exchange that is happening between carbon dioxide and oxygen. In the process of photosynthesis, plants are taking in carbon dioxide from the air and releasing oxygen as a waste product. They are building matter from carbon dioxide and energy, and so photosynthesis is an anabolic process. It is a surprising answer for many people when you ask them where the wood in trees comes from. Most people will say the ground and the roots, but in fact it is the carbon dioxide in the air that provides most of the material for trees. Trees and plants pull this matter out of the air in the form of carbon dioxide and use the energy from the sun to transform it into the stuff of trees as they grow. Using the reverse equation, all living creatures in food chains will extract the cellular energy that was trapped by trees in photosynthesis using oxygen, and as a result they produce carbon dioxide as a waste product. In simple terms then, plants are consuming carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen, whilst animals are consuming oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. In fact, if you could somehow magically separate plants from animals, drawing a divide between them so that nothing was shared between them, neither could survive without the other. In our plant domain, carbon dioxide would gradually decrease, starving our plants of their food. And in our animal domain, oxygen would gradually decrease, suffocating all animals. This then represents a happy and balanced relationship between photosynthesizing plants and respiring animals. The waste product from one is required by the other, and this prevents carbon dioxide and oxygen levels from ever becoming too high. That's of course if we ignore this whole burning fossil fuels business. Throughout this process, solar energy is being trapped by photosynthesis and transformed into cellular energy, whilst this energy is then released as carbohydrate and oxygen are transformed back to carbon dioxide and water by cellular respiration in all the metabolic reactions taking place in living things. Note of course that plants also produce carbon dioxide and water in their own metabolic reactions. In other words, both photosynthesis and respiration take place in plants. In this video, we will look at one side of this whole process, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a complicated process with several parts to it, as you can see here. It can broadly be divided into two stages, a light stage, which consists of two different pathways, and a dark stage. Let's begin by looking at the first pathway in the light stage. The light stage simply means that this stage is light dependent. This stage cannot take place in the dark. Energy provided by the light allows the reactions to happen, and indeed they happen so quickly in the presence of light that no enzymes are needed at all in this stage. Whilst all the stages of photosynthesis take place in the chloroplasts, the light stage happens in the grana of chloroplasts, in the stacks of thylakoids. First of all, light is absorbed by the different pigments in the chloroplasts. Chloroplasts contain a range of pigments which absorb different frequencies of light. By having such a range of pigments, it allows chloroplasts to absorb a much greater range of frequencies of light, and therefore absorb more energy. Plants absorb all of the colours of white light except green light, which they reflect, and so they appear green as these are the reflected frequencies that we see with our eyes. These pigments will transfer the absorbed energy from one to another until the energy reaches what is called a reaction centre chlorophyll, which contains the molecule chlorophyll A. Here energy is transferred to electrons, causing them to become energized. After this, these energized electrons are passed through a series of electron acceptors, during which time the electrons lose their energy and eventually they are recycled back to the chlorophyll as low-energy electrons, to be re-energized by the energy passing down through the chloroplast pigments. For this reason, we say that pathway 1 of the light stage involves cyclic electron flow. This energy that is released by the electrons as they pass from one electron acceptor to the next is used to convert low-energy ADP to high-energy ATP. This ATP is the main product of pathway 1 in the light stage, and it will play an important role in the dark stage, as we shall see shortly. The second pathway of the light stage involves all of the same steps that we saw before in how the chloroplast pigments absorb energy. In this pathway, however, the energized electrons that are passed from the chlorophyll to the electron acceptors will not be recycled back to the chlorophyll, having transferred their energy, but rather they will themselves be transported by an energy carrier and used in the dark stage. This presents a problem, however. If these electrons are being transported away, the chlorophyll will eventually run out of electrons to energize. This means that new electrons have to be presented to the chlorophyll to replace these electrons that are being lost. These electrons will come from the splitting of water molecules by light, in a process known as photolysis, into hydrogen ions, electrons, and oxygen gas. The oxygen gas produced can either be lost from the plant through stomata or used in cellular respiration in plant tissues. The electrons produced by the photolysis of water will be transported to chlorophyll, and from there they will be added to NADP+, along with a hydrogen ion, to form the high-energy NADPH. This high-energy NADPH will then transfer these electrons and hydrogen ions to the dark stage of photosynthesis. Since electrons are not being cycled back to chlorophyll in pathway 2, but rather are being transported to another part of the chloroplast for the dark stage of photosynthesis, this flow of electrons is referred to as non-cyclic electron flow. The primary products then of this pathway are NADPH and oxygen gas. The final stage of photosynthesis is known as the dark stage or light-independent stage. It is of course known as this as it does not require light. Rather, the reactions of dark stage are controlled by enzymes, and so it is affected by temperature. It occurs in a different part of the chloroplast to the light stage, outside of the thylakoids in the stroma, where these enzymes are located. Of course, the dark stage does require the products of the light stage, ATP and NADPH, so whilst it can operate independently of light, it will not operate for long once the products of the light stage stop being produced. Hence, photosynthesis does not happen in the dark. In this stage, carbon dioxide, mostly from the air, but some will also come from respiration, enters the chloroplast, and powered by the energy released from the breakdown of ATP to ADP, the electrons and hydrogen ions from NADPH combine with carbon dioxide, and it's converted into glucose, which is of course a carbohydrate. We would say that the carbon dioxide is reduced to glucose since it's gaining electrons. This reaction in turn will mean that ATP is converted to ADP, and NADPH is converted back to NADP+, which will then be recycled back to the thylakoids in the chloroplasts, where they will be converted back to a high-energy state again by taking on a phosphate group and a hydrogen ion and electrons, respectively. Overall, then, we see that the two pathways of the light stage transfer different things to the dark stage. The first pathway, with cyclic electron flow, transfers ATP. The second pathway, with non-cyclic electron flow, transfers NADPH, and its other product, oxygen, is released or used in respiration. We can summarize the different things needed for photosynthesis to occur and where they come from, and what happens to the products from the different stages. For the light stage, using pathway 1, or cyclic electron flow, energy from the sun is required, and the product of this pathway is the high-energy ATP, which passes to the dark stage. For pathway 2 of the light stage, energy is also required to energize the electrons in chlorophyll. But now, of course, since electrons are being transported to the dark stage as a part of NADPH, one of the products of this stage, then these electrons must be replaced, and this comes from the photolysis of water, which frees hydrogen ions and electrons needed to convert NADP+ to NADPH. The other product of this non-cyclic electron flow is oxygen, and this leaves the plant through stomata or is used in respiration taking place in plant tissues. Finally, in the dark phase, carbon dioxide comes mostly from the air, but also a product of respiration in the plant, and will be converted into glucose, a carbohydrate, by the high-energy molecules from the light stages, ATP and then NADPH. It is worth mentioning also that whilst both the light and dark stages can happen during the day in bright light, only the dark stages can happen in the absence of light, since these reactions are driven by enzymes. But of course, the dark stage cannot happen without the products of the light stage, and so photosynthesis will not happen in the dark. As a result, we see a difference in what a plant or tree uses and produces during the day and at night. During the day, photosynthesis will predominate over respiration happening in the plant, and so the plant uses up carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. At night, however, in the absence of light, and therefore photosynthesis, respiration will predominate, and the plant releases carbon dioxide and takes in oxygen. Overall, of course, when you consider day and night together, a plant will cause an overall decrease in carbon dioxide and an overall increase in oxygen.